Hi everyone, this is Nick, and today we're going to be taking a look at the initial setup of the Gaggia Anima series. So this will cover how to get the machine set up for your initial use, programming your water hardness, installing the optional but strongly recommended Mavia Intenza water filter, your accessories, and getting your grinder dialed in to optimize for your espresso. So let's get into it. Out of the box, you'll find several accessories included with your Anima. Now, these are useful for both setting up the machine, operating it, and maintaining it. Now, when I say setting up, let's actually start with our first here, which is the dual-purpose scoop and socket. So on the one side of this scoop, we have the socket for adjusting our grinder, and on the other, the measured scoop for the bypass doser. That's how you would use pre-ground coffee to brew with your machine. Next to that, we have a tube of Gaggia's Brew Group lubricant. This is a food-safe lubricant that can be applied to the brew group, the actual mechanical mechanism that's used to compact and brew your espresso. This keeps that sliding and moving properly for the longevity of your machine. Up next, we have a brush. So this is used for detailed brushing of coffee grounds off of your brew unit when being removed from the machine for cleaning. After that, our water hardness test strip. So this strip you'll see in action in just a second, which is used to actually set the water hardness for your machine. That's how the Anima will know how frequently it needs to descale. So the last accessory that we've got in this lineup is actually a Prestige only accessory. This is the included water spout. Now, this is a spout that fits into your machine's front socket where the carafe fits in as well. So when you're not using your auto frothing carafe and want to preserve the aesthetics of your machine, simply insert this spout. It's also used for when you're going to dispense hot water with the machine. So keep that somewhere that you have handy. The last accessory is not included with the machine, but again, one that I strongly recommend, which is the Mavia Intenza water filter. This is a filter that will not only remove contaminants and other flavor, detractors, say like chlorine or particulate from the water, but it will also reduce the frequency of the descaling. So with this filter installed and your water hardness programmed appropriately, the Anima will know how frequently to alert you that you need to decalcify your machine. So with that, these are the accessories that you'll need to keep an eye on with your Anima. Now for a quick behind the scenes look for our Anima, I do want to mention that when we are first getting these machines set up, plug in your power cord in the back, but also flip the power switch to the on position. Both models of the Anima do have a physical power switch that will need to be switched correctly before the power button in the front of the machine will actually work. Once that's done, it will illuminate with a red ring behind it, so you'll know that you're actually in the on position. But just wanted to point that out before we proceed to the next steps. We are plugged in, and now let's strap in for some excitement. Go ahead and press the power button, and we'll see that the alert has told us that we need to put some water in this machine. Now, I'm going to take the reservoir out and go and rinse it, but anytime that you've got a new machine like this, you want to make sure to rinse it and never use the first water that you put in the reservoir to actually brew. We want to get that nice and clean first. So another trick too is that with the Anima's reservoir, you want to grab on both sides of the handle and simply pull up. That will give you the best leverage to remove the reservoir. I'm going to go ahead and take this to the sink, rinse it out, and put it back in the machine. With our water in the reservoir, it's time to get the machine primed and ready to use. Now, I do want to point out that this is not a brand new Anima, so some of the processes that I'm following here may happen much more quickly than if your machine is brand new. Now, priming is drawing the water into the pump so that it can start pumping water for your espresso. Now, on the baseline Anima, that water is going to dispense from our hot water spout, and on the Anima Prestige, you will want to have the water spout inserted so that you can dispense water from there. Now we'll go ahead and get the reservoir inserted into the machine. Our priming icon is now displayed on the screen. And again, because this is not a brand new machine, I was able to complete that prime much more quickly. So when you're first getting that set up, you can expect a little bit more water to be dispensed before we are now presented with the Anima's standard home operating screen. Now that our machine has been primed, we can turn our attention to the water hardness. So water hardness is basically the amount of mineral content in your water, and those can deposit on the inside of your machine, prompting it to remind you, hey, let's decalcify. So in order to appropriately set your machine, you'll want to use the included water hardness test strip that comes with the Anima and Anima Prestige. But while we're doing that, as a bit of a shortcut, we will also get our Mavia Intenza water filter prepared for install in the machine as well. So let's go ahead and tear open the test strip. Now, it may be a bit tricky to see on camera, but there are actually 4 green squares on this strip, and when we dunk it into the water, those squares will change color from green to orange, indicating the total level of hardness. So that's going to be pretty straightforward between 1 and 4, so you don't need to be a water scientist to read the results, but we'll go ahead and just dip that in our bowl here. And so after that's done, you can shake any excess water off and then leave it to the side. Now, it may take a minute or so to get the final results. And when it comes to testing the water, you want to make sure that it is going to be the water that you will be brewing with in the machine. So if you are going to say, change, filters that you're using in your house or something that may soften the water, you want to make sure that that is what's being programmed into the machine. And now with the Mavia filter, our prep for this is pretty straightforward. Basically, we want to hydrate any of the layers of filtration on the inside of the filter. And so to do that, we'll go ahead and submerge it in our water and give the cartridge a couple of squeezes. So this is going to get some of the air bubbles out and start filling the cartridge here with water. Because what's going to happen is we will need to go ahead and activate the filter, which will involve drawing water through the reservoir. That pulls it through the filter, and it's much easier to do that if the filter is also hydrated. So I'll go ahead and leave that in there for a moment. Now, my results are pretty clear. That's 2 orange squares. Now, that indicates a light hardness. So Gaggia actually has 3 that they like to identify in their documentation. The Mavia cartridge will need to be set based on the results. So we have settings A, B, and C on the filter here, and we can adjust between them using the 2 grips on the base. You simply pinch and twist to move it between them. Now, the filter is going to default to B out of the box. A corresponds, though, to a result of 1 to 2, B to 3, and C to 4. So I can go right ahead and switch this back to A. And with that, our filter is now ready to be installed into the reservoir, and we know our water hardness to program into the machine. With our science experiment out of the way, let's go ahead and actually get those results programmed into the machine. Now, the Anima has a dedicated menu button that we'll press to enter our menu, but it's important to note that for navigating the machine, the corner buttons of our suite of 6 are also used for confirmation and navigation in menus. So the espresso button is the return arrow, which will take us back from our current selection. The aroma strength is used to confirm a selection. Steam and menu are up and down arrows for navigating. So now that we're in the menu though, we'll go ahead and navigate down to the water hardness. Now we'll confirm, and you can see that we're presented with 4 options ranging from the results of 1 to 4 from our water hardness test strip. In this instance, we don't need to make a change because our result actually was 2. But if yours was different, you'll want to go ahead and change it, because this will determine how frequently the Anima reminds you that you need to perform a descaling cycle. Once that's confirmed, you can also now navigate down to the water filter menu. So by confirming that, you can see that our options are on or off. By telling the machine that the filter is on, it will change the descaling frequency to account for the presence of the water filter in the machine. So we'll go ahead and move this up to on. And once we're done with that, we'll actually go over the final process of activating and installing the filter. So we'll go ahead though and click on. And the thing to note is that once the filter has been activated, the machine will eventually prompt you with an icon on the screen letting you know when it's time to replace it. And if you keep up with that, it will ultimately reduce the frequency of descaling for your machine and help guarantee better tasting espresso. So let's take a look at the installation and activation of the filter. For our final step, we will now install the filter into the reservoir and then finish the activation. So as you can see, there is the water inlet, which has a socket that can fit this filter. So simply go ahead and turn it so that the water inlet for the water filter itself is facing away from the wall of the reservoir. And then you can actually see, because we've got our transparent reservoir here, that we've got it installed. You may see some bubbles come out. Once it's firmly in place, we'll go ahead, lift the reservoir back into the machine, and close the lid. So to actually activate the filter now, make sure that the layers of filtration are working, Gaggia recommends that we will now pull an entire reservoir's worth of water through the hot water wand. So simply have yourself a bowl or large pitcher handy and perform the hot water dispensing cycle until you have evacuated all of the water from the reservoir. Then simply replenish and your filter is ready for use. So to do this, we'll cheat and go ahead a couple of steps in our overview here to just hot water dispensing. So just press this button. You'll see the thermometer heating up, and then the machine will dispense hot water. And again, you'll just want to repeat this process until all of the water has been run through the machine, refill the reservoir with fresh water, and then you'll be ready to start brewing espresso. Now, I don't want to leave you in suspense for what some of the other menu items were that we had scrolled past while we were activating the filter. So we'll go ahead and hit menu again to cover those final settings before we get our grinder dialed in. So the first option that you'll be presented with when accessing the Anima's menu is the coffee temperature. So this is a universal setting that will affect all of our coffee drinks, and there are 3 steps, min, medium, and max, that are a range of approximately 175 to 185 degrees Fahrenheit for your drinks. So it's important to keep in mind too, though, that with any espresso machine and super automatics included, there are tricks that you can do to get hotter coffee that primarily revolve around getting your cups appropriately heated before brewing. But if you're like me and like most people, you'll simply want to make sure that you have set the temperature to max and you'll be good to go for brewing. So we'll confirm that selection and continue going down. Now, standby is the amount of time that the machine will stay on in a ready to brew state before it powers off. Now, this is also going to affect the frequency of rinsing because when the machine powers back on, it will perform a bit of a rinse. So we have a range between 15 and 180 minutes. So that's 3 hours of total on time if you opt for 180. So I'm going to leave it at 180 so that we don't have any accidental shutdowns during this video. So we'll continue scrolling down to the display contrast. Now, this allows you to adjust the contrast of the display. You'll simply want to set it to the, easiest to view for your eyes. So go ahead and change that as you need, and you won't have to touch it again. We've already taken a look at water hardness. We've taken a look at the water filter. Next after our water filter is the Start Calc Clean screen. So this is where we would actually start the Anima's automated descaling process. So if you see an icon on your screen similar to those triangles that you see here, that's the Anima letting you know that you need to descale. So that again is how you would break down the built up minerals, and we recommend that you always use the approved Gaggia decalcifying solution when you are descaling your machines. This is the approved and safe solution that will break down those minerals without causing issues. Now, I won't actually go into the descaling process as it can be somewhat lengthy, but continuing on, our last is the factory reset option, which will reset your settings back to the Anima's defaults. So only do that if you really need to switch things back to the way they were. And otherwise, that is the full overview of the Gaggia Anima's menu. Before we move on to the grinder, I do want to point out a small nuance when using the Anima Prestige. So we have additional drink options that are hidden inside menus actually. So when you press the menu button, you'll be presented with two options, menu and drinks. So in order to get to the same menu that we just saw on the baseline Anima, you simply want to make sure that you select menu. And as you can see, we have all of those same options. Drinks is how we will get to additional brewing options like froth milk and hot water that I will cover at a later time in a different video. For our final phase of setup, let's take a look at getting our grinder calibrated for the Anima. And now to do that, we're going to want to go ahead and take a look at our grind adjustment post and our current grind setting. So you can see in the hopper in general, we have a couple of landmarks that we'll be taking a look at, but the first is going to be this yellow post. This is how we adjust the grind size, and there's a small arrow on this post that points to our current setting. There are 5 fineness settings in the Anima, and I always recommend that you start at the finest before making any other changes to the grinder. So it's important though that you actually make these adjustments before adding coffee to the machine. So what happens is if there are beans inside the grinder and you try to make an adjustment, Gaggia really recommends that you only move one step at a time. This is to prevent damage to the grinder. Now, I recommend, of course, that we just do this before adding beans. Makes it much easier to see this post, and we can freely adjust the grinder without issue. So to adjust, simply fit the hexagonal socket from the scoop over the post. Then, like you're opening a bottle of vitamins, simply push and turn. You do need to make sure that you are pushing down when you are turning, and you can confirm using this arrow again where we are set. Now, we can also see this auger here. This simply pulls the coffee down into the grinder. It's really important that you do not use extra dark or oily beans, as the oils can build up on the inside of this hopper, on that auger. They can build up on the inside of the brew group and ultimately cause problems with your machine. Now, our last landmark again is this hatch here. This is the bypass doser. That is how we would load pre-ground coffee directly into the machine's brew unit. So I'm going to be providing a demonstration on that as well. But at this point with our grinder set, our last step is to simply add some beans and we will be ready to start brewing.